Man, that was the most wonderful thing I've seen in years. And boy, man, I just lost for words.
That was Astros skipper Dusty Baker on Sunday after the Astros somehow improbably pulled one out against the Yankees and head into the All-Star break on a high note. Good evening, everybody. Welcome yet again to the Fox 26 Sports Stream, whether you're joining us on our YouTube channel, on our Facebook page, fox26houston.com. We appreciate you riding with us for the next half hour. As always, I'm Sal Manine, sports producer here at Fox 26. We're going to be talking a lot of baseball as they're just getting the Midsummer Classic underway up at Coors Field. Of course, no Astros taking part as they all had to opt out for various reasons, but the AL and NL set to square off. If you want to tune your TV to Fox while you have us on your computer, laptop, tablet, phone, whatever the case may be, we'll keep you updated with how things are going in Colorado. And of course, the MLB Draft just wrapped up, plenty of local fare, and the Astros making some news today with a name that'll be very familiar to Astros fans in terms of one of their draft picks. So we'll get into that. And then a little later on, David Resnick, NBA G League announcer, called pretty much all the games in the G League bubble during this past season. He's going to join us to talk about the upcoming draft and specifically Jalen Green. It's a name that's been popping up a lot as we get now basically 2 weeks away from the draft, 2 weeks from Thursday, the NBA draft, and the Rockets currently with the number 2 pick. There's been some reports that they're out there trying to move up to number 1 with which the Detroit Pistons have. But Jalen Green's been a name that's been thrown around a lot as possibly being perhaps the best overall player in the draft, but at the very least, the guy with tremendous upside and potential that if he doesn't go number 1, which it looks right now like that's not going to be the case, that could be somebody that the Rockets look long and hard at if they don't decide to double up on their big men and go after Southern Cal's Evan Mobley, who they would have to pair with Christian Wood. You could say that, all right, those two guys are very similar. Obviously, Mobley known a bit more for his defense, and it does create matchup problems if you have 2 athletic big men. And then if they're both able to switch on defense, then you can do a whole lot of things. But there's a whole lot of people around the NBA and especially the G League where Jalen Green played who had nothing but amazing things to say about this kid and his potential. Remember, he was the number 2 recruit coming out of high school right behind Cade Cunningham. And at the 11th hour, he decided he was going to join the G League, play for the new team that they had in the G League, the Ignite, which was signing guys that had not gone to college before. And so he was one of a handful of guys who decided not to go the college route, go straight to the G League, and he was very impressive. So we'll get David Resnick's thoughts on that. And then we'll also hear from a baseball Hall of Famer who certainly must have at one point had some mixed allegiances with the Yankees and the Astros playing. Not anymore, though. Mark Berman will explain that one in a little bit. But we got to start with how the weekend changed on a dime for the Astros and just how quickly the narrative can shift in just a matter of minutes as the Astros down 5 runs going into the 9th inning of the Sunday finale on the verge of being swept by the Yankees, who, yes, right now that is the Astros' primary rival, given how often they've met in the postseason and, of course, all the drawn that the Yankees have done in recent years. But the Yankees are a 500 team right now. And here's the Astros after that big win, that big series to start last weekend over the Cleveland Indians. And then they drop one against the Oakland A's. And then all of a sudden the Yankees come to town and look like they're going to sweep the Astros heading into the break. Garrett Cole, of course, making his return to Minute Maid Park and puts on his best performance, not just of the season, but since he left the Astros, a career-high 130 pitches, a complete game shutout, as that's how the Astros went down 1-0 on Saturday night. And then Sunday, you're just kind of going like, all right, well, they're still ahead in the division. They're still one of the top teams in the American League, so it's not anything that you really need to panic about. but you don't want to go into an almost week-long break thinking you just got swept, and you just got swept by a mediocre team at that. And then, of course, it all changed in the ninth inning, capped off, of course, by Jose Altuve, the 3-run walk-off homer off Chad Green, just like he had done earlier this season when the Astros were on the verge of getting swept up in the Bronx. And Altuve took Chad Green deep in the eighth inning, and the Astros rallied to win that one. And then they win it in absolutely dramatic fashion. And so now they are at the All-Star break, 3.5 up in the division, tied with Boston and the White Sox for the best record in the American League. And most of their guys are relatively healthy. Of course, they're waiting to get back some of those bullpen arms. Framber Valdez has been kind of dipping a little after he came off the injured list and looked so good for his last 4 or 5 starts until struggled with his control and command yet again. So something to keep an eye on, but at least the Astros riding to the break, feeling good about themselves. And that's something that Dusty Baker reiterated after that thriller on Sunday.
We needed that game badly, way to end the first half before the break. That is great. That's one of the greatest feelings I've ever seen. It couldn't be happier for a guy. Jose, he's done it time and time again, and especially do it, with all the jeers and, from the Yankees. And, it's wonderful.
Now, of course, the backdrop to everything that happened over the weekend was Saturday. Aaron Judge hits a solo home run, turns out to be the only run of the game. As he's rounding third, he starts tugging at his jersey, mocking Jose Altuve and the walk-off that he hit against the Yankees in 2019 that sent the Astros to the World Series. And then remember, it was shortly after that the Mike Fiers story broke and everything going on with the sign stealing scandal. And somewhere along the way, there becomes this internet rumor and all this speculation that people start dumping on the Astros with no real evidence other than just somebody said it online, so it must be true, that Altuve was wearing a buzzer under his jersey, and that's why when he hit his home run, he was grabbing his jersey and telling his teammates, "Don't touch my shirt, don't touch my shirt." Whereas, again, if you watch the Astros that entire season, he had hit a game-winning – he had a walk-off earlier in the year where the team did rip off his jersey during the celebration. And he said, "I'm a shy, bashful guy. That's not really something I like, being out there shirtless." So he knew that it had happened when he hit a walk-off earlier in the year, yet it all somehow boiled into this Buzzergate controversy. So, of course, Aaron Judge rounds the bases as he hits a home run, tugs at his shirt. Reporters ask him after the game, "Why'd you do that?" And he coyly is saying, "Oh, well, it's chilly in here because they closed the roof. So, I was just telling my guys, make sure you button up." Then Martine Maldonado on Sunday counters after he hits a home run, and he starts pulling his jersey back and fanning it a little. And then when he was asked afterwards, was that a shot at Judge or a retort to what he did, he rather sharply said, "Oh, it was hot. I had to get some air inside of my shirt." And then, of course, when Altuve walks off the Yankees yet again, 4th time since the 2017 postseason that the Astros have walked off the Yanks in Minute Maid Park, the team said that there was no way they were not ripping Altuve's jersey off of him completely. And you even saw during the game, too, that after Martine Maldonado had his comeback with Judge, the Yankees started Gary Sanchez had a home run, and they put a warm-up jacket around him because it's chilly inside. I, for one, kind of like when baseball lets the guys have some fun like this. It's not like guys are throwing at each other or the benches are clearing. So if guys want to jaw and talk or pimp home runs, or we saw Fernando Tatis likes to dance around the bases. The Padres have the big gold chain they give to guys when they hit home runs. It makes for a more enjoyable experience when you have this back and forth like that. So I don't mind it. I will say, though, somebody might want to tell Aaron Judge, you probably want to think twice if you're going to start trolling people. Because as I just mentioned, the Astros have walked off your team 4 times in their home building, and they've absolutely owned you in the playoffs. And oh, by the way, every time you start opening your mouth or get on Twitter and you want to, take shots or try to troll someone, which obviously if you're going to play professional sports, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, whatever the case may be, you have to have a certain irrational confidence almost and truly believe that you are one of, if not the best at what you do. Otherwise, you can't go out there on a day in, day out basis and compete against other world-class players. But Aaron Judge, if you're going to talk the talk, you got to be able to walk the walk. And you tried it against the Astros, and it didn't work again. Just like a few years ago, remember, Judge got in trouble because the Yankees beat the Red Sox. Alex Cora's first year as Sox manager in 2018. The Yankees won Game 1 of the playoffs. Aaron Judge is standing outside the locker room playing New York, New York on his portable speakers, and then the Yankees lost the next 3 games and were eliminated. So I don't mind guys going back and forth and, I'm going to rip my jersey, I'm going to take it off, put the jacket on, all that stuff. It makes it fun as long as everybody's safe and it doesn't end in beanballs and punches thrown, but you better be able to walk the walk. And Jose Altuve has certainly done that against the Astros. Now, I did mention there was a guy who might have at one point in his life had some mixed feelings about watching an Astros-Yankees matchup, but no longer. Reggie Jackson, yes, Mr. October, the Hall of Famer, as we told you about a few months ago, is now officially a part of the Astros family, working as a special advisor to owner and chairman Jim Crane. He was at Minute Maid Park this weekend, decked out in his Stros gear. Our Mark Berman caught up with him. He's got more from the Hall of Famer.
Famer Reggie Jackson officially joined the Astros family back in May when he became special advisor to owner Jim Crane after ending his long-term relationship with the Yankees. It's an opportunity for Reggie and Jim to work together on charitable efforts focusing on youth, and for the man known as Mr. October to share his expertise in baseball as well within the Astros organization. Long before this came about, Reggie and Jim had become friends.
When he bought the Astros, I just, really clapped for him. I was happy for him. I knew he was working at it hard. I was doing the same thing with the A's and the Dodgers. And then I saw him when he bought the Astros. He had a significant uphill climb, but he got the city turned around, he got the fans behind him, and built a wonderful franchise. And, it took him, he bought it in 2011, and 6, 7, 8 years later, he's in the World Series and wound up a winner. And so now he's got a popular franchise and, something to be proud of.
And Reggie is proud to work with Jim to make things better for the youth in the underserved communities.
It's exciting for me. I want to try to do something to leave a positive mark. And so my focus for the last 25, 26 years has been on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, and raise the level of interest in graduating from high school, raise the level of interest in graduating from college, and with STEM education. Jim has a great deal of belief in that. The opportunity to work with Jim on this stuff, Mark, gives me an opportunity to participate and make the world a better place.
Reggie is thrilled to be able to offer his thoughts to GM James Click on the baseball side of the organization, similar to what Hall of Famers Jeff Bagwell and Craig Biggio do, along with former Astros star Enos Cabell.
I've got a little bit. I have 55 years of experience in the big leagues, and I'm, certainly feel good about, my participation and working with those guys. Being a part of that is enjoyable for me. I like it. I look forward to seeing our minor league teams here and being involved in spring training and helping with and continue the progress that the team has had.
Always great to hear from Mr. October, who I'm sure Astros fans will be seeing a lot more of around Minute Maid Park. Now, I did mention the MLB Draft wrapped up today. That started Sunday. The Astros, of course, didn't have a first or second round pick as a result of the penalties from the sign stealing investigation. But they did make one pick in the late rounds today that will be of some note to Astros fans. Will Wagner, second baseman from Liberty University. And yes, he is the son of that Wagner, as in Billy Wagner, the 6th all-time leader in career saves, and of course, an Astros legend, inducted into the Astros Hall of Fame last year. And it's staying in the family, as now his son will get to begin his big league career with the team where he was drafted way back in 1993 and became a baseball legend in his own right. We were lucky enough to catch up with Will and Billy earlier today, shortly after Will heard his name called and found out he was going to be a professional ball player. Here's what they had to say about that moment and how it all went down.
I hugged my mom, my girlfriend Brooke, celebrated a little bit, and then I saw my dad walk in the house, and I could already see tears in his eyes, and that just made me tear up even more. It was a special moment. We hugged for about a good minute, and it was just a special moment between us.
You're not really worried about who drafts him as long as he gets drafted. And so being drafted back into the Astro family, I mean, you know, it's a great feeling. I mean, it's a great opportunity for him to go out there, and I think he's going to be familiar with a lot of the settings that he's around, and you know, the opportunities are there for him. So all you ask for your child is have the opportunities, and now having this ability to play in a family that is going to give him that opportunity, I think you know, it's special.
I mean, I grew up there. I don't really remember much, but I know I was a little kid laying in the grass on Family Day.
Scared of Junction Jack.
Yeah, scared of the mascot, running around. But I think it's just a full circle again. It's coming back around to me. But I'm just honored to be an Astro, be part of this organization.
And we will have much more from Will Wagner and Billy Wagner tonight after the All-Star game. So be sure to join us on Fox 26. Now, from one draft that just finished to one that we still have a little ways to go, just over 2 weeks until the NBA draft begins. The Rockets with the number 2 overall pick behind the Detroit Pistons. There was a report today from Shams Charania of The Athletic saying that the Rockets have been very aggressive trying to move up to get that number 1 pick from Detroit. Eric Gordon was a name that was thrown out there as they've been active in possible trade talks to unload the veteran who, when he's healthy, everybody knows what he can do and what he can contribute. And if they are able to move him, whether it is to Detroit for number 1 or somewhere else, as they try to find the best way to rebuild this roster, something to keep an eye on. Now, all initial reports and prognostications, and most people you talk to feel confident that it's going to go Cade Cunningham, the point guard from Okie State, number 1, and then that's where things really begin with the Rockets. Do they go with the big athletic center and Evan Mobley, who can step out and shoot it from the outside, can also protect the rim? Do they go with the college hero, Jalen Suggs? Everybody remembers what he did in that NCAA tournament for Gonzaga and that buzzer beater. Or, as I mentioned at the top of our show, Jalen Green, who people say might have the most upside as far as any of these guys. It's just a matter of how quickly does he mature in terms of physically and adapting to playing night in, night out against NBA competition. And what do you make out of what he did in the G League? Remember, the G League bubble, they only played 15 regular season games, and then his team, the Ignite, was eliminated in the first round of the playoffs. He still put up good numbers, shooting better than 37% from 3, averaged 18 points a game, was able to play both on and off the ball. So there's a lot of people around the NBA who think he might, while it's not a sure thing, that's a lottery ticket that you might not want to give up on, because if it does hit, he could end up being the best player in this draft. So obviously 2 more weeks to go with what the Rockets are going to do or what they want to try to do. And new GM Rafael Stone, this is going to be his first chance to really reset what this franchise is going to be and where it's going to go as we get closer and closer to finding out who's going to be the newest member of the Houston Rockets.
We just know that we're going to compile as talented a roster as we can. And, you know, one of the very best ways to add talent in the NBA is through the draft. And so, you know, I do think it's very likely we'll at least add 1 draft pick, most probably more. And and also add some guys from free agency. And I think all of it will make us better. That certainly is the hope.
All right, let's talk some more about the upcoming NBA draft and what may or may not happen for the Rockets at number 2. The name Jalen Green has been bandied about quite a lot in recent days, and he's a man who knows a lot more about Jalen Green than most folks. The voice of the Westchester Knicks and an announcer for the NBA G League, David Resnick. How you doing, brother?
Sal, always good to talk with you.
So let's start with the man who I brought you in here to give us the lowdown on. You did a bunch of Jalen Green's games. Obviously, his entire sample size in the G League, still relatively small, but what immediately jumps out to you is having seen him play a lot of basketball against other professionals?
Yeah, the first thing that really stands out about Jalen is the natural athleticism. I worked with a number of really smart people during the G League season, whether that be, and this is the name dropping section of the program, whether it was Rebecca Lobo or LaChina Robinson or Andrea Carter, worked with Vince Carter a couple of games, and it's just there was
wasting no time to just drop the big ones.
Yeah, bury the lead there, right at the end, and it's just he made one play a game that just defied reason with his athleticism, whether it was a dunk, whether it was him levitating on a downhill drive to the rim, whether it was hanging and hitting or eluding a defender in midair. He was always good for one play that took your breath away in terms of the athleticism. And maybe there's a question as to whether or not he could do that type of finish or that athleticism would stand out at the next level. But you kind of realize that he's an 18, 19-year-old kid. Just months prior, he was in high school. He's playing against pros that have professional experience or major college experience. And so the fact that that play or that athleticism stood out, I think was noteworthy. And that was on top of just the overall poise and presence that he showed on the floor and the sense of belonging. And I think when you go to the next level or you're trying to find your way, the fact that it looked so natural and he stood out, I think said a lot about him. And it happened from the jump. I mean, the first game, G League Ignite, the team that he played for in the G League, was featured in the opening game of the season. It was against Jeremy Lin and the Santa Cruz Warriors. It was an ESPN2 game. He had the platform. There was all the hype going in, and he just looked natural. He just played basketball. And I think when you consider the natural gifts that are obvious, and now you throw in all those intangibles, it makes for an interesting prospect.
I mentioned that you've been doing more than just this past season of G League games. So you've seen all kinds of guys who are big time recruits in high school, superstars in college, come through the G League ranks. How often is it that you see somebody who kind of checks all those boxes, like you said, that looks like he belongs, he really stands out? I mean, are you kind of able to tell when you're watching G League games, those guys who you go, yeah, I could kind of see them taking that next step, or, you know, why an NBA team might want him on their roster, whether it's for a 10-day or to eventually become a regular player at the next level? Is that something that, you know, readily stands out on a day-to-day basis in the G League?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can tell the players who are really close, or the players that are looking for the right fit, or just refining a particular skill, or they have an NBA skill and they just need to round out their game enough to find their footing. And there are a number of examples of players who have built legitimate NBA careers who spent a stint or significant stint in the G League. And you just know they're waiting for their opportunity and they're going to build an NBA career. And it's just a reason or two why they aren't quite at that level yet. The G League is home frequently nowadays to number one draft picks. I mean, if you look at 2018, 2019, 2020, basically half of the first round picks of that particular draft year end up playing at least one game in the G League. So you typically see young talent, or you typically see players that are on the verge of becoming rotation players. There's an argument to be made, considering the potential and the level that Jalen Green showed, that, he's just one of the most dynamic players in the league the last couple of years, because you typically don't get a top 5 pick playing in the G League, and maybe he's obviously not fully developed, and he's on the younger side in the league, obviously without any college experience. But the fact that he was able to stand out that way was pretty significant. And he was a top 5 member of the class of 2020, and to start the basketball season, he was a top 5 projected pick, and he never wavered. He stayed in the top 5, even under the microscope of NBA executives and GMs that went to watch him play in person in Lake Buena Vista. There were players obviously throughout the year that had their stock rise or fall, but Jalen's been really consistent in mock drafts in the top 5 throughout.
You mentioned the poise that he showed for such a young player, and as you just mentioned, still only a teenager. Obviously, we know about the athleticism. You just have to do a quick peruse of YouTube. You can see all the highlight reel plays. What else, though, is it about his game that has him in this position to go possibly in the first or second overall pick? I've seen comparisons to Bradley Beal with his ability to score at all 3 levels, the fact that he is long. Obviously, he still has to bulk up. You continue to develop physically, but what kind of player is Jalen Green?
I think that was a great point. He can get to the rim. He can finish really well. He's good in transition. He's developing that mid-range game, the mid-range game off the dribble, looking confident, running the show, and continuing to work on his shot. I brought up the intangibles earlier, and that's huge. The sense that he felt comfortable taking over games. He felt comfortable deferring. He felt comfortable being a playmaker. His scoring was consistent throughout the G League season. Most impressively, I did a game after his lowest scoring output of the season, and he came right back, and he bounced right back. There was a lot to like about him. I remember his coach, Brian Shaw, kind of talk about they were all the young guys. He was one of 4 players with Jonathan Kuminga, Daishen Nix, Isaiah Todd. Those were the centerpieces of G League Ignite. Those were the NBA prospects, the would-be college freshmen that chose to play in the G League instead of going to college. And at times they would all look to take turns and kind of take over the game. But there would be times where Jalen would understand that his role in that moment was to facilitate. And when you look at the numbers, there's a 15-game regular season. They made the playoffs as the 8th seed and got eliminated in the quarterfinals to the top seed. Like, the assist numbers started to go up. The turnover numbers went down. The outside shooting efficiency went up. And so I think, part of the package is that he got better. Ignite had an advantage going into the season because they started to train with each other the previous summer. And so they were with each other since August. And so when the season started in February, they already had weeks and months of being together, and they got off to a really hot start against other teams that had been cobbled together in the previous month. And even with the entire league gunning for them and him in particular, and even as the league got better as the season went on because there was more practice time and continuity, his performance stayed consistent. And I think, outside of the numbers, which were impressive, outside of leading the team in scoring, which is always a nice thing, it was just the 15 games in 25 days and just the ability to be a force throughout. And they were obviously going to get their minutes, and they were supposed to play, and they were going to be featured. But I just don't think you could take for granted the fact that he never wilted.
Do you think it's just a matter then simply of it was only 15 games or 15 in the one playoff game as to why there hasn't been more buzz? I know some mock drafts have said Jalen Green goes number 1 and that maybe the Detroit Pistons do say there's just too much potential to possibly pass on. Is it just a matter of only playing so few games compared to Cade Cunningham has an entire season of college basketball? Or is there something else that you think maybe scouts, teams, coaches, execs, all the decision makers are kind of wondering, like, is this kid really that good?
Well, I think what's interesting is I believe Jalen at some point in the last couple months tweeted this idea that if he had played in college and he had gotten that type of platform, that he would be higher in mock drafts. And it was an interesting take because there's probably or potentially some truth to it. And it was very odd in some ways to have the person they're talking about make the statement, especially because he made the decision to play in G League Ignite and bypass an opportunity for college, a decision that he still feels really good about. And he felt like it was the right decision for him. I think we've seen over the years prospects that had big marches that jumped up mock drafts or established themselves in mock drafts or coming out of nowhere. Because of a big NCAA tournament. And clearly he never had that opportunity. He had a great platform on ESPN and NBA TV and all the different social media and the NBA and G League engine behind it. But, he's not going to be as much of a household name as Jalen Suggs, somebody who's going to hit a big shot on a big stage. I do think in a big picture sense, it'll be very interesting to see what Jalen does his rookie year, because the whole idea of playing for Ignite and in the G League is to basically get a head start of playing on an NBA court and playing in an NBA system and understanding the spacing and the tempo and the pick and roll. And so he's been a pro for a year. And maybe he's not as good as some of the other guys projected to be top 5, but maybe he'll be more ready to contribute right away. He was a trendsetter, last spring. He was the first domino that decided to play for Ignite, and then the other prospects followed, and it became a viable commodity. And he's got an opportunity to be a trendsetter in his rookie year, because if he comes out really ready and a major contributor, like, you don't have a control group. You don't know if it was him on his own, and no matter where he went and what he did, he would be at that level. But if he comes out showing his ability to play in the NBA at a level maybe higher than those other guys or higher than whatever the expectation might be, then I think the idea of him playing in Ignite would be validated.
You mentioned the growing popularity of the G League among the top prospects, whether it's before or after college. Obviously, we know that Jalen Green is probably the first Ignite guy that goes. I do want to get your thoughts, though, on Jonathan Kuminga, another G Leaguer who is following this kind of new trend of foregoing college in order to start playing professionally a bit earlier. What can you quickly tell us about Kuminga, who the Rockets are probably not taking at 1 or 2, but you never know when trades happen or if they do trade back. He's another guy who you've heard talked about going top 10, possibly top 4 or 5.
Kuminga just looks NBA ready. He just looks like a guy that you could plug in at the 3 and you wouldn't realize that he's 18 years old. This is pure just kind of speculation on my part and just talking with people and getting a sense for him, is that I think that there could be teams out there that really, really like him and would be their first selection or like him above other players, but just wouldn't find the value or wouldn't have the gumption to take him in the top 3. But if he fell to them at 6 or 7 or whatever that number is, they're going to be really happy. He still needs to work on his defense and his motor and playing every play. He has a bit of a line drive shot from the outside, but just his physical tools, he probably did, Dacian Nix and Isaiah Todd probably solidified themselves as 2nd-round draft picks. But like Kuminga, because there was so much unknown about him, he had reclassified. He was supposed to be the class of 2021. He had been injured in a number of different showcases. he was somebody that NBA teams got to see at the early stages of the Ignite season, and I think really opened some eyes in terms of what he could be. He's still a project because he doesn't have a lot of basketball under his belt, but he's just such a physical specimen and just a kind of he's just so interesting. And again, at the G League level, you typically don't get somebody with that type of skill set and that type of well-roundedness in terms of his ability. In the G League, you typically get somebody that can do one thing but not another. And if they could do the other thing, then they'd be an NBA player. And you typically don't get such big physical wings like he was or like he is. So, Jalen and Jonathan were the two headliners of that Ignite team. They would share the spotlight. They were the top two scorers. And similar to Jalen, it'll be interesting to see, what Kuminga is able to do at the NBA level to, again, validate that path.
Yeah, it's one of the more intriguing storylines for me in this draft. Not only the order of the guys that are picked, and of course, for folks here in Houston, who the Rockets end up with, but just what does become of these Ignite guys, and does this open the door for more and more kids to possibly jump straight to the G League before going to the NBA? Obviously, we know that the NBA is changing the rules, and high schoolers will be a part of the draft coming up. With that being said, and with what you see going on with college basketball and name, image, likeness now being a part of that world, how do you think the G League is going to be affected by some of these younger prospects either staying in college longer or maybe deciding not to go the Green and Kuminga route, and maybe I want to go to a Kentucky or a UCLA, a Syracuse, a Kansas, where maybe you can make some money off name, image, likeness? How do you see that and the changes to the high schoolers going to the NBA draft affecting the G League in the coming years?
Did my ears pick up on an inclusion of an orange team with some blue bloods, or am I imagining something?
They were a Sweet 16 team, lost to the University of Houston. I just threw it out there.
I see the tie-in now. I understand. I think, first of all, for Ignite to be viable, they only need a handful of players. They could tap into an international market as well. And then they supplement those guys with other NBA and G League veterans. So it's not like you're looking to create a full league. You're looking to create a place in an arena for these players. And something that I didn't mention earlier, Jalen and Jonathan and the rest of those guys, they deserve a lot of credit for this past season because what they ultimately experienced was different than what they had first signed up for. It was supposed to be a team in the G League that was separate from the normal regular season. They were supposed to play exhibitions. They were supposed to play different junior national teams. And instead, they ultimately became part of the actual league and played regular season games that counted and were part of the playoffs. And just the anticipation of playing and months of training before they were playing games and seeing their contemporaries playing in college and then ultimately doing something that was different in a bubble. And they handled it beautifully. I don't think so much that the G League will be affected in just the sense that, I guess maybe the pool of players that you would target are now getting even more options with different alternatives to college existing. I think that the question will be answered better this time next year once we know what Green and Kuminga have become based off of their G League experience. Because again, if they come out and they show a level and a sense of readiness that their contemporaries don't, then it becomes a much more, in my opinion, attractive option, laying the groundwork for future players to really give a serious look to that avenue. If you feel like now Ignite becomes the best way for you to become a successful pro.
It'll certainly be something to keep our eyes on in the coming weeks and, of course, months as the rookie year plays out for so many of these guys. Again, he is the voice of the Westchester Knicks as well as the one of the announcers for the NBA G League, a true pros pro and a good friend, David Resnick. Thank you, my man. We will do it again, I'm sure, some other time. Take care and enjoy your summer.
Yeah, I appreciate it. You too, Sal.
of different things. So if you're the Rockets and you have a chance to possibly get the guy who has the highest ceiling and you do need so much help, why not roll the dice and see what happens with Jalen Green? And who knows, he may not even be there for the Rockets. Again, there's a handful of people that are, again, this is kind of the silly season where everyone throws out all kinds of speculation and wonder, but maybe the Pistons do decide that they don't want to pass up the potential of a Jalen Green. But I think if he's there for the Rockets at 2, I think you have to roll the dice and take him, pair him with Kevin Porter Jr., Christian Wood, Jayshawn Tate, and see if he really can reach his potential at the next level. All right, that's going to do it for us. Quick update on the All-Star game. 1-0 AL. They are in the bottom of the second. It looks like Aaron Judge scored on a Marcus Semien. Yes, Semien drove in Judge. So that's the score right now, 1-0 as they play in the bottom of the second. So, of course, go watch the rest of the game on Fox 26. Then be sure to join us afterwards for the news, where we'll have much more on Billy Wagner and his son Will Wagner, who is now a part of the Astros organization, as well as another draft pick with some local ties. And if you follow high school baseball, especially here in Houston, you'll want to check out that story. My thanks to Mark Berman, and of course to Mr. October, Reggie Jackson, to David Resnick, and to the Wagners. We will do it again next week. This has been the Fox 26 Sports Stream. I'm Sal Manine. We'll see you then.